Welcome back to I Am the Islands. I'm Sarah Lazama. My guests today are U.S. Attorney Denise Hines and Immigration Customs Enforcement Agent Hillary Hodge, and we're talking about sexting and the consequences it can have on teenagers who engage in it both in the cyber world and in the real world. Are teenagers, do you think, fully aware of the consequences of sexting?
I don't think they are, and that's what part of some of our outreach activity is that we do to the schools. We try to educate them about the consequences, about future employment, about future education, future social groups. And I think, like Attorney Denise Hines said earlier, that when we were as teenagers, we'd write a note and you crumple it up and you throw it away. And a lot of times teenagers are not aware that once it's in cyberspace, it doesn't come back. It doesn't go away. They may delete it from their phones or think they deleted it, and it doesn't go away. So we really don't feel that they're aware of the consequences, and that we try to educate them of the consequences through programs like this.
So they're not really thinking before they hit that send button.
Well, think about it, Sarah. These are children. And what do we know about the judgment of children? It's surely not as fully mature to the point where they can make certain decisions and understand the lifelong consequences of it. So through programs like this, if we put it right in front of their face and do a little bit of shock therapy, they realize that that moment of boredom when you send that picture out, it can follow for the rest of my life. So.
And when you say the rest of your life, what exactly are we talking about?
Well, we still see images that have been taken years ago online. You know, the cases that I do, I prosecute individuals that exploit children online, individuals that receive and transmit child pornography. And these are older adults, and a lot of times they're 60, 70-year-old men, sometimes online pretending to be 14-year-old guys, you know. And when we arrest them and we search their computer, we find images as old as 20, 30 years ago. So think about it. The image that is sent today to the person who they think is their boyfriend, they've moved on with their life. They're now looking for a job. They're in the middle of a job interview, and they have their resume and everything is in place, but yet they don't get the job. Why is that? Because employers are now not only relying on your presentation and the resume that you give them, they're going online. Mm-hmm. They're going online to see what kind of person you truly are. So it does follow you, and when you make decisions later on in terms of who you want to marry, the children that you have, it's not going away. Your image that you took when you were in high school, your children, your husband, and everybody else is associated with you will be able to see it 10, 15, 20 years from now.
So those messages are getting passed around even if you think they won't be?
Well, yeah, because they're out there in cyber life, in cyberspace. And so they're out there to be collected and downloaded by pedophiles, to be searched and culled by potential employers. And suppose you become a senator or something. I mean, we always go online and look up our senators and see what their latest legislation is. Mm-hmm. And I pull up the senator's name and I get an image of when they sent it back, 30 years ago. So it doesn't go away. It's still out there.
Well, just to be clear, there are no senators in the Virgin Islands that
no,
may have, or at least that we know of, that
probably
have
a bad
that.
example. But the point is, whatever your occupation is,
right,
the more famous you become, the more likely it is that your name will be searched.
And I know that you do a lot of the investigation forensically to uncover those images. Are you finding a lot of what Attorney Hines is speaking of?
Yes, we have. There's been several cases that we've had, and we found images that are several years old that we've already know the series. These once children are now adults, and we're still finding the images being passed out on various media. One key thing I want to let, especially children, the parents know, because cell phones are much more than what they were just 10 years ago. Cell phones are your mini computer in your hands, and it has all the functionality. Most of the cell phones have all the functionalities of what we knew of computers 10 years ago. And it's very important that teenagers are aware of that, and be aware that if their cell phone they took a picture on their cell phone, the information is still there. It can be undeleted. Not even as professional software, there's commercially available software out there that'll help recover some of those deleted files, much less what we do in law enforcement. So just want teenagers to be aware of that, because you have a little SIM card or a little media card, and you store information on there, and you think you're just going to sell your cell phone, or I'm going to delete it and it's going to be okay. It's not okay. that information, it's still there. In most cases, we can still recover that information.
Wow. So there's no changing your mind in cyberspace. Anything you post never really goes away, is what you're saying.
That's correct.
Okay. And there's also an other side to this, emotionally, scars or ramifications that can be left behind from sexting.
Just based on the individuals that have come into our office, you have a whole family that's in complete distress. So what the child has done or allowed to be done really affects her emotionally. It affects the family. And, that's no small thing, considering the fact that we are a small community, where family lines go back for generations, where everybody knows everyone. Mm-hmm. We've had instances where children and their families have actually had to leave the island because the images are out there, and although you try to contain it by taking down either my Facebook account or taking down off of YouTube or trying to talk to the people who you think may have gotten it, we can't get it all. And it's unfortunate from a law enforcement perspective to say that, because we like to think we can solve all the problems, but this is one area where once it's out there in cyberspace, you can't get it back and the whole family suffers.
There's also criminal implications as well. Agent Hodge, have you ever had to arrest a minor or really go after someone for using these photos or looking at these photos, storing them on their computer?
Correct. Well, we haven't arrested any minors to date, but we have arrested adults that are involved with child pornography. We've had several here within the Virgin Islands. We've even had cases where they've been sending it to other people, downloading from the internet, and also production of child pornography, which carries a very serious criminal conviction. Mm-hmm. But we have not arrested any minors as yet, and that's something before we go to the route we discussed with the prosecutors, before we go down on the route.
And in the States, though, and like I said, what's happening up there is happening down here. So really it's only a matter of time. But what we have found in the States is that you have an individual, a boy, who's 17 years old. He's having a relationship with a 15 or 14-year-old or even another 17-year-old. Mm-hmm. And he convinces a person to send images of themselves, and they do so. And he turns 18. This has happened in the States. He turns 18, and he's caught with those images on his computer or his cell phone. He now is prosecutable and has been prosecuted as an adult. And we know of one particular case in New Jersey, and there are countless others in the States. And the penalties are very stiff. For producing child pornography, either producing it of yourself or another person, or having someone produce it of you, that's a mandatory minimum 15 years. Must do not pass go, mandatory.
In jail?
Yes,
correct.
Federally. For receiving child pornography, that's a mandatory minimum of 5 years. And of course, there are penalties for possessing it as well. So this 17-year-old boy in New Jersey, who celebrated his 18th birthday and didn't think about that image he had of his girlfriend on his computer, is now an adult. And he was prosecuted as an adult. And therefore, not only did he do jail time, he also is required to register as a sex offender, sometimes, in some cases, for the rest of your life.
I know that our sex offender statute here is getting ready to change, and that we are going to have a tier system in terms of our registry, and
Absolutely.
that minors engaging in this activity can very well end up on that, having
Absolutely.
to place their name on that list.
Absolutely.
Okay. And what about, how do you prevent this from happening? If you receive one of these images, or if you have already sent one of these images to somebody?
Well, first of all, that's what we're doing here today, to prevent people from sending images of themselves. And if you've already sent it, images of yourself, report it. Let us know. We can work on trying to get it back as best as we can. And it also helps us trying to know the date and time and getting certain information that's needed. If you receive an image, more importantly, report it to law enforcement immediately. If you're an adult, immediately report it to law enforcement. Not, I was going to report it when we find it 2 years later, mm-hmm. or I had it there and I looked at it 100 times, because forensically we can tell how many times you look at it, when it was accessed, when it was modified, anything that happens within that image. We can usually tell what transpires throughout the history of it using special forensic software. In addition, don't delete it. If immediately report it to law enforcement and then let law enforcement take over from there. Do not, more importantly, more than anything else, don't forward it. Don't even send it to law enforcement as far as forward it in the email. If you get a sexually explicit picture or child pornography, do not forward it. And we don't want you to forward it to us either. Very important, very, very important. We'll take over from there and take the proper precaution in trying to get it removed from your computer and forensically investigate the history of that.
It's interesting that you advise not to delete it, because if I were to get an image like that on my phone, the first thing I'd want to do is delete it. Why not?
Well, don't immediately delete it, because contact law enforcement and we will let you know, usually within a very short period of time. If for some, then we have to go through a delete process. And even if you delete it, we need to get it completely off your computer. And oftentimes that takes a little bit more, because you may think you just deleted it and it's gone. But of course, that's not going to be a week later, 2 weeks later, 2 or 3 days later. That's going to be immediately. Those things are priority for us. We're going to try to get in there, take a look at it as soon as possible, and work through the process of getting it properly removed from your computer.
And also we'll be able to trace it back and determine where is its origin, who else may have it. Try to contain the image as much as we can, because imagine if you're a teenager and you've taken an image of yourself and it gets out there and you regret it, you would want the person that has received it to contact law enforcement to try to contain the problem. You also asked the problem about what to do if you receive an image, and Agent Hodge talked about what to do if you receive an image as an adult. But what if you're a child?
If you're a child, report it to a responsible adult or law enforcement. Anyone that's a responsible adult, a teacher, your activities coach, or mentor, report that immediately to a responsible adult, and go from that. From there. Don't take it around and show it to everybody. Very important. We've seen instances of that, and the same thing. They've taken it. Oh, look what I got. You see this? You see that? That's not the way to do it. Immediately stop, report it to a responsible adult, and let it be, and hopefully that adult contacts law enforcement immediately. And we're trying to put that out there in the community.
I think there's some teenagers out there who may receive a picture like that, but then who would be afraid to go to an adult, thinking that they would get in trouble for having it. But in reality, the consequences may be even worse once you keep that on your phone for a period of time, or on your internet, or whatever it may be.
And we're trying to communicate to the child that it's the responsible thing to do. So actually you will be looked upon favorably for it.
And when I say, and I want to go back a little bit as well, because when I say don't delete it, obviously if for some reason the next best thing is to delete it, if we can't get in contact with law enforcement or whatever, can't delete it immediately. But that does not mean, I want to repeat, because we see it and we hear it all the time. I looked at it 20 times and then deleted it 2 years later.
What other things can we do as teachers or parents within the schools to prevent this from happening?
Well, the fact that we're having shows like this, the fact that we are actually bringing this issue out of the shadows and sensitizing the children to the fact that, hey, look, I was on a radio program this weekend, and along with me appearing was Commissioner Francis, VIPD Commissioner Francis, and he was responding to one of the questions put forward to him by one of the students, and actually he came up with a good phrase, and I hope he doesn't mind that I use it, but he said we should take this out of being a matter of fame, because a lot of times children think they're sending it on, it makes them cool, it makes them popular, and it gives them fame. We should turn it from an activity of fame into one of shame.
Right.
So by communicating to them that this is nothing to be proud of, this is nothing that is cool, this is nothing that is frivolous, and they realize it now, it's out of the shadows, and we think that'll go a long way to containing this problem.
Well, sexting is obviously a very serious issue with very serious consequences. So we hope we got the message out to the parents and to the children as well, that if you get something like this, make sure you report it to the proper authorities, and parents to monitor your children.
That's correct.
Okay, well, thank you both for being
very
here,
welcome.
and we appreciate it. And that's it for this edition of Eye on the Island.